Some contend that there are places on Earth that are unusual, locations where strange happenings abound and mysteries dominate. Lands of lore, so-called window areas where all varieties of paranormal and anomalous occurrences take up residence, from causes or reasons unknown. One such place is an area located near and around the small southern Illinois river town of Grand Tower. Once dubbed the unluckiest town in America, it is now considered an epicenter for anomalous study and a hotspot of high strangeness. A mysterious place which has hosted numerous tragedies, electromagnetic oddities, multiple UFO and orb sightings, unknown hominid creature encounters, haunted and cursed accounts, and other bizarre and unexplained phenomena.
The whole area is it goes way back in history as being a strange area.
So the definition of high strangeness really is when you have anything super anomalous, even outside of what you would typically expect from some sort of paranormal occurrence.
You know, people would look at me weird by saying this, but I believe that my area might be a portal to unexplained.
Well, first of all, you have to acknowledge that 1973 was the big year in terms of Bigfoot and a potential UFO connection.
I look at the data, I listen to the reports by credible people, and I try and analyze it all together, put it all together, and find parallels and patterns that may exist.
I went out on the porch there. I lived in Grand Tower at that time, and I went out on the porch and looked up toward the plant, and I could see the bright red blinking light.
And that's just the way it was. And where it was, I got no idea, but it did happen.
This is Somewhere in the Skies with Ryan Sprague.
Welcome to another episode of Somewhere in the Skies. And joining us today, if you're watching this on YouTube, you will see their faces. Return guest, Michael Huntington, and we have the director and filmmaker of the new documentary, Grand Tower UFOs and Other High Strangeness. And that is the one and only Joseph Tury. Gentlemen, welcome to Somewhere in the Skies.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
Of course. Now, I had an opportunity to watch an advanced screening of the film, and not only was I excited to see some familiar faces in this thing, but some new faces as well, new UFO cases I've personally never heard of, in areas that I've never personally researched or investigated. So, I mean, right off the bat, you won the heart of a 20-something year veteran, Joe, of UFO research, and the fact that it was narrated by Michael Huntington just made it all the better. So I want to sort of start, guys, with your relationship. Like, how did you two meet, and sort of give us the origin story of how Grand Tower came to be, and what it was like working with one another, if you don't mind, whoever wants to take that.
Yeah, so my third documentary I did was called Creature from Big Muddy. I started that in 2020, fall of 2021. I can't remember at this point. It's too long ago. And then I was doing that with two authors, Chad Lewis and Kevin Lee Nelson, who wrote the book, The Big Muddy Monster. And I contacted them. That's how I got into that story. And they have they just had a list of people like, oh, you should have this guy, this guy, this guy. So they reached out to different people for me to be in the film, Michael being one of them. So at the time, I just thought Michael was a cryptid guy. Like, I didn't really know who he was, you know. I'm just, okay, cool. And, you know, he graciously said, yeah, I'll be in the film. So we had him on camera talking about it. And I'm like, man, this guy's pretty good. You know, he knows what he's talking about. And he knows his stuff. He knows some of this obscure stuff that I didn't even know, what's going on. And then, some of that B-roll that hit the floor, cutting room floor. Kevin, I had a story with Kevin, and he was talking about Grand Tower and things like that. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting, and I was always looking for my next film, of course, as an independent, and started to get a little bit more interested in the Grand Tower case. And Chad's like, you know what, you should talk to Michael about that. He's an expert on that stuff. And I'm like, really? And pretty much it was that easy. I'll give a little filmmaker secret away. When you need someone or need some help, just reach out to him and ask. I find this in this the world of the weird community. Everybody's very generous and always willing to help. So I just kind of reached out to him, and it just took off from there, pretty much. Yeah, that was about 3 years ago. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Long time in the
Yeah.
making. Okay. Well, Grand Tower, obviously I want to talk UFOs, but to rewind just a little bit, I have to ask, what is the big muddy monster? This is a cryptid I've never even heard of. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a pretty amateur cryptid, I guess,
No,
researcher.
that's
when
funny you
comes to
say it that way, because my thing is Bigfoot. I'm a fan of everything. I'm just a huge fan of Bigfoot stories. When I was a little kid, I remember people talking about Momo. No one ever talked about Big Muddy Monster. I live 2.5 hours from Murfreesboro, Illinois, where the Big Muddy Monster case happened. Big Muddy is a river down there. This alleged Bigfoot-like creature came out of the river. That's why it's called the Big Muddy Monster. So it was like, I saw the book cover when I was looking for movies to film, and I'm like, what in the world is this? How do I not know about this? I've watched, all the shows and all that stuff, the cringy shows that you see. I love all that stuff. I'm just a huge fan of it. And came across this case where I'm like, this is crazy. And it's only a couple hours from my house. But basically the main bulk of the case happened in 1973, the year 1973. Although there was reports before that, there's been a couple instances after that, but it was just this creature that reportedly was in this small town of Murfreesboro, Illinois, over the course of about a month or so. And it wasn't a one-off creature per se, but it kind of was, as it kind of disappeared after a month in time. I mean, again, there were stories afterwards, but I don't know if I would consider it the same creature or same event. But it never really attacked anyone or anything like that. It was more like lurking in the bushes and watching people type of thing. So
just curious.
Yeah, just a curious creature. Yeah, I don't know what it was. I hope it's a Bigfoot. I don't know.
Well, I think we should say that Southern Illinois, which is the area that we're talking about, where Momo was seen, where Grand Tower is located on the Mississippi. It's like half hour, 45 minutes from me. So this is my backyard. This is my stomping ground. I'm in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, right on the Mississippi, on the other side of the river. And I focus on GPS positioning anomalies, whether they're UFOs, ghosts, strange locations, native sites, places with weird phenomena, cryptids, Bigfoot, whatever. If I can GPS them and position them, the idea is that we can define places like this where a lot of this stuff occurs, so that we can try to figure out what's going on. Why is it localized? Why is it in this one? Why is there so many things going on in this one spot? Why is it tied to the geography, the geology? So that's the sort of thing that I do. And where I'm at, luckily, Southern Illinois just so happens to be where Loren Coleman did all of his early research. Loren Coleman, he's the father of cryptozoology. He'll say that it was somebody else, but that's just him being, Lawrence. So, and also on the Missouri side over here, we had Ted Phillips, who was J. Allen Hynek's protege. So we got all his cases over here. And I've made it a point over the past, decade to visit all these locations that Ted Phillips has researched and that Lauren Coleman has explored, and to try to map this stuff out to find these locations. And Grand Tower has proven to be one of these type of spots. A legitimate hotspot of anomalies, not like a flat place or, where something happened and went away, trying to find these spots where this stuff is sustained, through the folklore and then over years, I think is a good way to try to encourage study of it. If not, we're at least preserving the folklore and the small town stories, and in a lot of these small towns that are dying. So, I encourage that at least, to try to get these accounts out, to find out where the lore is, to try to find out these places. So, I've worked with people like Joe, who are interested in, the lore, because that's what he is. He's a filmmaker that looks into Southern Illinois lore, and hats off to him. And other people like Seth Breedlove, his whole company is devoted to that. They work from a model that sustains themselves without exploiting, all of these subjects, but they also reach out and encourage creativity to try to document these places, get more details, so that we can look at these things, through the proper lenses, historically, scientifically, culturally, whatever. Because even if it's a folklore story or a hoax or whatever, that's still valuable and it's still interesting. And when you find these places where there's just a preponderance of things going on that exceed, just probability, then you start to want to consider causal elements. And that's what we're doing. We're sort of laying out all these different anomalies within the time that, Joe wanted to do it, without going into the minutia, but showing people that there are these patterns. And if you look at them, there's something's going on that I think that we can look at, that I think that we can speculate about. We have a lot of researchers, some of the best in this documentary. It's just great to see them participating and sharing what they know. The people in this documentary are boots on the ground researchers. Mm-hmm. Every single one of them. Joe is a boots on the ground researcher. Joe is now a UFO researcher. Joe went back and investigated stuff that Hynek was involved in. He went back and he interviewed witnesses that Jerome Clark probably didn't interview at the time, and he's been able to capture this history before it's gone, and able to get the testimony, I think, out there, and to focus some of this back on the UFO subjects and the anomaly subjects themselves instead of the external stuff. This is a UFO case here where there's jets. And during a 1973 major wave, just across the river at Piedmont, mass sightings. 1973 across the country, Cronkite's talking about it. Some of the biggest cases were during this time period. There was a lot of weirdness going on. And it's interesting that this place is also one of them. So,
yes. Yeah, it was definitely a weird year. And this is definitely a weird place. And I love that you guys kind of used Grand Tower, I don't want to say famous, because a lot of people haven't heard of the Grand Tower UFO case, but they should, and they will in your film. It's kind of the anchor, I would say, of the film, or kind of the stepping off point of all right, this kind of major UFO sighting happened where, Michael, like you said, jets were literally like tried to intercept whatever the object could possibly
on
have
several
been.
occasions over a power plant.
Exactly. And I do want to dive into the case specifically with you guys, but before we do that, Michael, you mentioned researchers. Now, people are probably familiar with someone like Zelia Edgar, who I've had on my show several times. She actually has her show, Just Another Tinfoil Hat. We are now the official home of the podcast version of Just Another Tinfoil Hat.
Nice.
So I was really happy to see her in there. She's a wealth of information. But you also had a folklorist, you had a cryptid hunter. Tell us a little about these researchers, if you guys don't mind, who you have featured in the film. Joe, do you want to take that one?
Sure. We have Steve Ward, who is just a, Mr. High Strangeness himself. Steve currently works in the Mothman Museum. He gives tours out there, but he's just an excellent researcher. He's been around the block a few times for sure. He's been in different documentaries and such, and he's just like everybody I've talked to in this. They're just so super nice, man. I mean, it's just crazy. It's like, Steve, you want to be in this? Sure, I can give some insight into this, and it's not just generic information. Like it's funny that like if you're listening to their interviews, they'll touch on something that pops up later in the interview with the witness or something. So I mean, I just love how these people have this type of knowledge. And you mentioned Zelia, which that's the first time I met her when she interviewed for this, and it's like I can't, like, Steve refers to her as a potential new, like a John Keel type of researcher. I mean, I kind of agree with that. Like she really knows her stuff. She knows stuff about the area as well. Kevin Lee Nelson, who, he's an author, but he's appeared in different films as well. But Kevin really knows the area specifically, and which blows my mind. Him and Chad, they live in Wisconsin. They know roads in Illinois that I don't know. You know what I mean? It's like, how do you know these places? Yeah. Or they told me where to go on some, in different places. And then Ken Gerhard, he's our cryptid expert. I got Ken in there. When I first asked him, he was like, I don't really believe in high strangeness, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, he's like, I'm more of a skeptic on that. And I'm like, that's what I want. I'm not trying to convince anyone of this or that. I want opposite points of view. I mean, he believes in metaphysical, but he's not one to connect Bigfoot with UFOs. And he'll come out and say that. But again, that's what I want. I don't want people to think that I'm trying to steer them in a certain direction. I kind of approach it like, I kind of model it after Small Town Monsters. They're not really trying to say this happened and this is what you should believe. It's more like just presenting the facts, make up your own mind, and I love that approach. I think that's an excellent way to do it. And then a lot of the other people in the film are locals, either local researchers or eyewitnesses. So I've been blessed with to get a nice variety of people in here. Some believe, oh yeah, this is all connected 100%. Other ones are like, it's just kind of a coincidence type of thing, but that's the approach. That's what I'm trying to get across on this.
Yeah. Attacking it from all angles. I'm sort of working on my first major documentary right now. And nice. It's so important to get all sides of this. So the fact that you are willing to have someone of the skeptic nature, to talk about this,
you have to.
It's essential.
Yeah.
It's essential. Otherwise, you're just making a film promoting something that there's no, basis of evidence or fact for.
I mean, ultimately, skeptic, believer, all this sort of stuff, it's just different interpretations.
Right.
It's different competing interpretations of cases evidence, claims, the credibility of the witnesses, the culture, whatever. It's opinions, and because we don't know the answer, and to the ones that are still unknown or anomalous. So there are some cases that I think are interesting, and when I say cases, I mean ghosts, Bigfoot, UFOs, or whatever claim you want to have that's outside the norm. There are some that are interesting. There are some that are certainly not. They're not everything is real out there, and it comes down to the merits of each of the individual cases that are being considered. Each of the claims, like as far as like in Grand Tower with UFOs, ghosts, Bigfoot, they're all subjective. Let me stop that. They're all subjective, and some cases are stronger than others. Some witnesses and stories are more legitimate than others. We're sort of dealing with a lot of there's a lot of lack of evidence beyond the anecdotal. So we have to take what we can get information wise, and we have to parse it out in the proper, honest way as to what we have, and all the information that we can get on cases and pieces of evidence. That's how we're able to measure the likelihoods of what are the correct interpretations. And extreme interpretations are going to require a lot of extreme premises to be fulfilled in order for that to be achieved. So there's a lot of philosophical issues relative to what truly is skepticism within these paranormal subjects. I think it depends. I have been called a skeptic. I've been called a believer. People ask me, what do you believe with this case or that case? And that's the way you have to look at it. You have to look at it case by case, story by story, piece of evidence by piece of evidence. Some stuff I'm very skeptical of. Some stuff I have no problem debunking because it's worthy of debunking, because it's not true. There are correct interpretations, that you can get based upon the evidence. And there's a lot of stuff out there that you have to sort of sift through. And being skeptical, being critical, looking at all of these, not with a judgment so much as trying to get the information to make a determination. That's what we need to look at.
And that's one of the reasons why I like working with Michael is because I come across these characters in the world of the weird, as I like to call it, that I kind of feel like, hopefully this doesn't happen to you, Ryan, but the more I feel like people, when they're in these subjects over a period of time, they start to lose that skepticism, right? And they, like, everything starts to connect for them. Like, this is proof, this is proof, this is proof. And Michael's not like that. Michael, hey, Michael, what do you think of this? That's fake, and then he'll tell me why. And then he'll let me know.
But it's just my opinion.
Yeah, I understand that. But
we're all speculating.
Yeah,
we're all speculating, But
I like the fact that it's not,
I don't know. Yeah.
I like the fact that it's not like, oh yeah, that happened and we need to talk about that. It's there's some knowledge there, and like just a good head on that shoulder where not everything is fact, and you got to kind of look at these things individually to see if it's real or not, or if there's something substance there or not.
Oh yeah,
I'm actually a skeptic. I want everything to be real. I believe in the paranormal more than anything, but I don't even like messing with it. My favorite subject is Bigfoot. I'm 85% believer, depending on what day of the week it is, type of thing. And so I know UFOs are real. I'm not an alien believer, though. So that's where I sit. So I'm all over the place with it. I'm a fan of, you know, if anything else, I'm a huge fan. So,
Hey.
you know,
Yeah, we need those feds, Joe, for sure. And you know, and I love Michael, and Michael and I have been friends for a long time. And there's no denying that when he gets on Twitter, there people come out in droves to
Yep.
crucify the man. And I sit back and I watch these debates that people like Michael and other what would you even call people like you or I, Michael? Maybe like a open-minded
Well,
skeptic or a skeptical believer? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm a researcher. I've been a researcher for 47 years.
Yeah.
I have the receipts. So, you
There
know,
you go.
some people view this topic through a very particular lens of their own experience. My experience began in 1978. Every day since. So I have a different interpretation of this subject as well as a lot of these subjects. Some people take that as like an arrogant sort of thing, but I'm an old UFO guy. I'm a Gen Xer. I'm going to communicate how I want. I have researched a lot of these subjects. I know a lot of these subjects. I'm going to give my opinion on things.
Mm-hmm.
My ultimate goal, and I've been on Twitter mostly as a form of activism, pretty much in the past 5 or 6 years. I don't want to derail our movie or, you know, start a fight or get political or anything like that. There's a lot of that going on, but Twitter is that sphere within this current era of this subject, where a lot of activism and communication is going on. You know, that's sort of the area of focus, a lot of the social media. So I try to, myself and a few others, try to do some counter activism to a lot of the political stuff that's going on. And by counter activism, we mean, you know, like ufology, like promotion of ufology. I am a UFO reformer. That's my focus within my activist realm. But I'm also a researcher. I do research every day. I archive, I collect, I get into cases in detail and find out GPS positions. And I have this big map database system that I'm building. And I work behind the scenes with a lot of people, people that you don't see on Twitter, because Twitter is, you know, there's not a lot of researchers on Twitter, like legit, like serious. Dave Marler is not on there. Jan Aldrich, you know, Rick Hilberg, all these like legends, you know, are kind of avoiding that. So it's the idea that is the whole of the subject, I think, is sort of off. And my activism has been to encourage education, because I think if you're going to profess to be a proponent or an expert or an advocate for a subject, you should probably know the subject. And this is a 80, 90, 100-year-old subject.
Right.
And I think, legitimately worthy of a degree as a multidisciplinary subject that crosses all different boundaries, you know, because it has a history and personalities and a literature and cultural, political movements, influence. All this stuff is undeniable. So my goal is the promotion of ufology. I consider myself a defender of ufology. You know, there are invisible colleges, but there are also other groups of people that look to defend ufology, meaning the study of this subject. Unmanipulated, honest, open, considerate of all the different ideas, respectful in the discourse. Oh my goodness, wouldn't that be great if we could get back to some collegial discourse where, you know, we're not flaming and attacking each other over UFOs.
Yeah. People
threatening and attacking people over UFOs is the most ridiculous thing. And it's also frightening when you put that conspiracy stuff into it and all the cults of personalities. So we need to keep an eye out for this. You know, I remember Heaven's Gate. I remember all the MJ-12 stuff. I remember the hype from alien autopsies and, you know, all the other big things, you know, when TV shows had programs and it was the day of disclosure. The day of disclosure has been going on since the 70s. You know, it's
longest day of my life.
It's a subject. It's a subject, and you have to love the subject. And if you don't love the subject, then you're not really in it for the subject.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And this is a broad subject. You know, I have learned that UFOs and Bigfoot and all this stuff are sort of not the same cause necessarily, but they're all part of the same subject. Mysteries. Yeah. There's things we don't know. There's things in the world that people are claiming that are extraordinary. And even if some of them are true, then there are paradigms to be considered. And how do we get to those? How do we go beyond the speculation to find out what some of the causal sources are, you know, without getting trapped, without becoming cults or being controlled and manipulated? It's their concerns, but enough of my rant.
Sorry. No, not at all, man. No, I'm glad we got a lot of this out of the way at the beginning because it's very important. Like there are almost like religious undertones that creep up in these worlds, whether it's UFOs or the supernatural, and it can be harming to some people, you know, but it can also be a very, like you said, beautiful, mysterious thing to pursue. So I guess I want to dive into the meat of the documentary itself. Now we've sort of teased it, but the Grand Tower UFO event that occurred, can we sort of break that down for some of the budding ufologists who have never heard of this case? And whoever wants to take that, can you sort of walk us through the Grand Tower UFO incident? Hey everyone, Ryan Sprague here, host of Somewhere in the Skies. If you've ever thought about supporting us, we have great 2 easy options for you right now. If you listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, you can click the subscribe button at the top of your Apple feed. Or you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/somewhereskies. Both of these options give you the same benefits: early access to the main show, bonus episodes and content, and priority to ask our guests your listener questions. So to help support Somewhere in the Skies, click that subscribe button on Apple or visit patreon.com/somewhereskies. Thank you so much for your support, and keep looking up.
To set everything up, in 1973 in America, especially, you know, in the Midwest, was crazy. It's called the Year of the Humanoids, because people were seeing a lot of strange creatures, beings, cryptids, aliens, you know, metal men. They're seeing flying saucers of all different kinds of variety all over the place, in places like Piedmont, Missouri, where in March and April you had literally entire towns worth of people in central Missouri there seeing UFOs, but, you know, flashing lights, like Close Encounters type stuff, even before there was Close Encounters. The drive-in at Piedmont had like 500 people have a mass sighting at one time. You've seen a few people report on this, and these are all from, you know, historical records. Jerome Clark wrote an article for Fate magazine back in '74 that laid out some of the stuff that was going on within Piedmont during this time period. It became UFO capital of America for a time period, and Cronkite, I think, did some stuff on it. Hynek came down with Ted Phillips, looked into the Piedmont area. It was sort of nuts, and was actually going on there and over into Grand Tower and other places. All of this throughout this year, you got, Coin Mansfield, you got Pascagoula, you got all sorts of things. There are documentaries made just on 1973. And what was going on? Was it an invasion? Was it some sort of mass hysteria thing? Was it an extreme theory, like somebody laced the water with LSD? It's all out there, that everybody trying to explain all of these different claims and all of these different mysteries under one umbrella. But it is interesting that a lot of this all happened within this time period. And in this time period over Grand Tower, Illinois, a small town on the Mississippi, not too far from Piedmont, just across the Mississippi, there was a power plant, and some UFOs were seen over that during a subsequent period and over the area. And there were reports of military jets chasing these off. And we go into some of the details there within the article, in the film, and we go into there are originating reports. I did look into it, and it is a legitimate thing, and we know it's a legitimate thing because Joe was able to track down witnesses and peripheral witnesses and people to confirm all this. So it's not one of those Pulp Fiction magazine made up sort of things. This is the research of Jerome Clark that is the basis. That was one of the things that I put on the map there, along with all of the other things within my GPS positioning that denoted patterns. But it's a great unknown story. I'll let Joe go into more of the details as to which witnesses we were able to talk to. But needless to say, Joe did some boots on the ground investigative UFO journalism and tracked down witnesses from a 1973 UFO event.
Wow. Yeah, like out of any of my films, this is the first one I felt like I'm an actual researcher. I know that's funny. I don't consider myself a researcher, but I'm just like, I talked to a couple of the witnesses so they're the kids of, there was two main witnesses, Oscar and Willis. Well, the eyewitnesses I talked to were the kids of Willis. And you can see all that in the documentary, but they weren't talked to because, well, one of the children, she was 13 at the time. So I don't know if her dad was just protecting her or they're just like, well, that's a 13-year-old girl. We don't need to interview her type of thing. And then the Willis, her brother, he was in his 20s. So I'm not sure why they never talked to him. But what's funny about their interviews is their interviews matched up. They had no idea what the other one told me. As a matter of fact, the sister, who is Phyllis, she contacted me several years ago and told me specific things. And me, I don't have a UFO history knowledge. I just don't. I'm specific to cases. So she told me things and I'm like, okay. And then she kind of fell off the map. She didn't really want to participate. Then she found out I was interviewing her brother and she's like, well, cat's out of the bag. I guess I'm going to interview too. Right. So anyway, they did interviews separately from each other, lined up perfectly. Like, I'm like, okay, I believe you guys. I'm not saying it was aliens. They saw something 100%, no doubt in my mind. And it's just, there's details that were told that, I mean, Clark didn't know some of these details because, of course, they didn't ask the 13-year-old girl what was happening. So there's like, I'm like, oh my God, I found out stuff that these esteemed ufologists or researchers didn't know, and I'm like, heck yeah, you know what I mean? But so that was pretty fun. That was pretty eye-opening. And yeah, so again, you'll see this in the documentary, but if you don't, these people are older folk. They don't give two craps if you believe them or not. So that's why I believe them. They don't care. They really don't. They're not trying to get famous. You know,
they're also Mississippi River folk.
Yeah.
They don't care.
No,
they don't care what you think.
I respect that. I really do. Yeah. And, it was so refreshing again to see firsthand witnesses.
Yeah.
And that's just so important. So much of ufology nowadays, and this goes even into, all these intelligence people now coming forward, saying like, this happened, this happened, this happened. Oh, well, did you see it? No, but I talked to a guy who knew a guy who, once owned a dog who barked once and said that he saw this. And I'm just like, come on, guys. So it was so cool to see actual firsthand witnesses of such an interesting case. Like, again, we have to stress the United States Air Force came in the form of people like J. Allen Hynek and Project Blue Book to actually investigate this. Because again, this is one of those startling cases that happen over a nuclear facility, a power plant. And that's very important too.
Well, let's correct that there. It wasn't nuclear. Thank God.
Okay. Apologies.
But there are questions as to, during these visits, if it was connected somehow to an energy system or like some sort of siphoning,
right,
or whatever. There's more to research with this case. There's probably records out there. If there's an incident, there's got to be like incident records within the Illinois bureaucracy somewhere, right?
That company doesn't exist anymore, I don't think. It's called CIPS, right?
But there was like government oversight and
safety
requirements or reports that they had to maintain within the state of Illinois. So there's and if they had security incidents or they had incidents where there was energy siphoned off and that was possible, that's all going to be within reports.
So there's testimony I have that didn't make the film because these people didn't want to participate. You can't force someone to be in your documentary, right? So, but two different people, unrelated, their parents or somebody, I believe it was like their fathers, again, they're not related, worked at the power plant and told me that their dad said that the gauges were spinning and everything kind of shut down. And then this UFO left after it was chased off or whatever happened. Took a while for everything to boot back up. So that's where I think some of the speculation of power siphoning is coming from. I mean, I'm considering actually writing a book because there's so much more information that didn't make the film just because, again, you can't force people to, and if you put everything in there, it's going to be a 3-hour movie. Well, who wants to watch a 3-hour documentary?
And keep in mind, all of this is going on like right in sight of, within sight of Grand Tower, where there's a hill where there was a haunted house with a ghost, and there's a gas pipe hissing going across the river. It's like one of the few gas pipes, literally a gas pipe coming out of the devil's, kitchen is what they call it. And looking over all that is this, this Tower Rock, this weird paranormal feature that has been part of like native history and tradition that, goes back as a sacred spot that may have even had, like a cross atop it at the time of the conquistadors to mark, their northern exploration up towards the river. You got this, and then all within just a few miles, you have haunted places, other UFO landings, spook lights, haunted cemeteries. You got
cryptids.
You got your Murfreesboro mud monster. This is the big muddy monster. This is the same area. It's the same locale where people are seeing a giant hairy cryptid also.
Everything.
In 1973.
Yeah. Well, and the year and the place itself sort of become a character in your documentary too. Like all the things going on in the world at the time. You know, you had like you know, the idea of like psychedelics for becoming a thing, and you know, the hippie movement and new age, whatever. You name it, all the woo, it was all there, it was all happening. So it makes sense that like all of these different anomalous things would almost feed off of that or be birthed from that as well. And Michael, you did mention, you know, sort of the Native American aspect to this, the supernatural. Is that something you guys could expand on just a little bit in terms of what you covered in terms of possibly ghosts or the supernatural, or maybe even some of these stories that came from the Native Americans? Is that something we could touch on?
I think Joe could probably. We had our experts, you know, within the film sort of address that, and some of them touch on those supernatural elements. By the way, I didn't get to say that, you know, these researchers are some of the best. You know, I mean, Steve Ward is probably one of the best old school OG cryptid UFO researchers in the Midwest. You know, anybody that can get into, you know, the 1930s, 40s, 50s pulp origins, you know, he's a shaver mystery expert, you know, and a keel expert. And yeah, he's a great resource. That's why he's, you know, helping run the Mothman Museum, because he knows the subject. So to have him and all the other experts, Chad is a phenomenal writer. Kevin Lee Nelson, I think, is probably one of the greatest on the ground researchers, period. He travels around the country visiting more than me, you know, like probably 10 times as many places as I've been, you know, visiting haunted spots and places where there's cryptids and monsters and all that stuff to document it. And Grand Tower is one of those fascinating sort of places. And there's a lot of supernatural stuff. I think, you know, when you start to look at these at places where there's weird stuff going on, the preponderance of them are going to be haunted places where there's haunted claims. And those are easy to position, you know, because they're localized. You know, the folklore is attached to a location, a haunted house or whatever. Grand Tower has several of those. It has, you know, a folklore tale of a riverboat daughter who had a forbidden love with a riverboat captain, and it was forbidden by the father. And the house that was overlooking the river, she threw herself to her death, and her ghost haunts that area, you know, that overlooks the power plant, you know. So it's sort of interesting to see those things. You can't deny the spiritual connectivity, you know, just from the fact that ghost anomalies are anomalies. And they're the most common. And so spiritual interpretations, you know, origins of these that as causal elements, I think, are something to look at. And I think our experts offer quite a bit. I think Zelia is probably one of the best experts out there also, especially with being able to connect some of these esoteric, you know, spiritual interpretations with, you know, what may be legitimate phenomena and what we can speculate as to what might be some of the causal elements behind them.
Joe, did you want to touch at all on the supernatural side of what you guys researched?
So, again, there's things that didn't make the film that we could talk about. I would like to mention that Michael showed me a map that he got from his buddy at Southern Illinois University, SIU. But it was it was a map of all the mounds in the area, and you could just follow them. Yeah, you could just follow the Mississippi River and see all the mounds there. And we kind of make a statement in the film about, you know, how there's this old trope, oh, it's a haunted Indian burial mound type of thing. But it is really interesting. I mean, we're Southern Illinois, that's the Shawnee National Forest, right? So there were many native tribes in Illinois. And I mean, you could follow these mound builders along the Mississippi River. Cahokia Mounds is not too far from there. It's like they considered it the largest mound civilization in the United States, I believe, at one time. So there's like dozens of mounds around the Grand Tower area. We kind of concentrate on one because it's accessible. There's a lot on private property and things like that. A lot of flat burials, Native American burials around there. So Tower Rock what's funny about Tower Rock, that's what the city is named after. Grand Tower is named supposedly after Tower Rock, which is this feature that rises out of the Mississippi River. Yeah. Well, during the filming, I did some research, and there was actually multiple Tower Rocks there. And the Army came in and blew them apart. I don't know, probably for passage purposes, but this was considered a sacred area. I talked to someone who's a photographer of petroglyphs in the area. He told me that there was this some of the native cultures believed there was a giant snake that lived in the tower. There was whirlpools around the tower. So, and he took pictures of a snake, carving in a cave close by there. So there's a lot of strong native history in the area. So, and we touch upon this mound that has this, again, when you live in these small communities, they're going to have their folklore and their tales. And, you see this burial mound there. So there's a lot of stories of hauntings around the mound, just anomalous lights that they see in the area all the time. Things that didn't make the film is people see lights, orbs hovering over this geographical feature in the town called the Devil's Backbone. It's just kind of rises, this spine that rises along the Mississippi River there. It's a kind of a weird thing. I don't know how it's formed. I don't know if it's tectonic plates or what, but they see lights over the hill, and there's a fault line that goes through there. People think fault lines can cause energy sources that produce lights, that goes through the area. There's a tale of, I don't know if Michael talked about this, but they have tales of a female spirit named Esmeralda that apparently committed suicide there, that haunts the area. There's a tale of a wedding party that went out to Tower Rock, and then they came back and tragically died in the river. So their spirits haunt the area. It's a well-known location of pirates. So the Spanish cleared the pirates out of there, but there's a lot of legends, historical, sightings of pirate ghost, whatever you want to call them.
I was hoping we could squeeze pirates into this interview, so thank you.
We got several. We have several massacres as well.
Yeah.
We have several devastating floods. I mean, at Grand Tower, hopefully, people will come and check this place out, and Grand Tower will benefit from some people visiting. At one time, like Joe said, there was a ferry there and a restaurant. So, but like all river towns, they're sort of dying, mostly because of floods. And this town is flooded multiple times, and so the numbers are dwindling. The town, is certainly going to be smaller numbers in the future. Hopefully we can get people to take an interest in this, and hopefully we can preserve this history. And
that's one thing I like. You got to be careful as a filmmaker, not trying to exploit people.
Right.
these people love this region. It's not like they're sitting here all miserable and, you know, dying and just like looking around going, oh, we're all weird. You know,
they were called the unluckiest town in America at one point.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, they had that as their title, along with all this other stuff, you know, floods and massacres and weirdness and you know, hopefully
but they're still there.
They're still there. Yeah. I mean, it's a beautiful area. It's you know, it's one of the best areas in Illinois. It's incredible. As far as like, you know, I've been in this place in Arizona where there's like these ruins around. There's a hole in the ground where this air just pours out. It's a spiritual place, you know. So that kind of reminds me of the Grand Tower location where, you know, the native people felt like this was a spiritual area, that this was sacred to them. I have heard, like, read some accounts and some books that I've read about this, that, you know, there was kind of a joy in the fact with the natives that bad things have happened to this area. You know, not now, but I'm talking about in the past, like, because they were persecuted. The Trail of Tears is not too far away from this area, right? And then, you know, they're moved out of this area. People destroy their sacred, you know, location, and okay, now bad things are starting to happen. So again, I'm a skeptical guy and all that, but that's part of the legend. That's part of the lore. You got to mention that type of stuff, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And people believe in it. I mean, who's to say that their beliefs are incorrect? You know?
There are certainly things going on. I mean, there's certainly a preponderance of a lot of stuff going on, but there's also legitimate phenomena. There are riverboat captains that know that spot has electromagnetic issues.
Yeah, so we talked to someone, I'm not going to mention his name, but I said, hey, what about this? Is this true? And I was expecting him to say no. And he's like, oh yeah, it's our navigation instruments do not work in this area. That they don't communicate. And I'm like, what do you think that is? And he goes, oh, I just think it's the layout of the land. You know, it's kind of like a curvy area, and there's lots of features around that area, you know, like cliffs. But isn't that interesting? Where you have, like, you always have these weird stories, electromagnetic interference. It's true.
So think about that. You know, all of the river boats that go up and down the Mississippi go past Grand Tower, and all of them have electromagnetic issues due to something geological, electromagnetic within the area. So
Bermuda Triangle, baby. Right. Yeah, it is. Well, that's kind of the last thing I wanted to touch on with you guys, because again, we don't want to give away too much, but you do pose some theories towards the end of the film, which I found very fascinating too, whether it's fault lines or the geology of the area, electromagnetism. You bring up what could be considered kind of a controversial theory that has been speculated in different areas throughout the world, whether it's Stonehenge, Rendlesham Forest, the pyramids in Egypt. This idea of the 37th parallel. And I know there are people rolling their eyes right now, but there's also a lot of people being like, yeah, it's real. It's real. And it just so happens that Grand Tower is an area that does allegedly fall on the 37th parallel. So what do you guys think? Do you put any stock into that, or should we let the film speak for itself when it comes to that?
I think we talk about it, and I'm a mapper, and I map anomalous locations, and you do see patterns. I don't think you necessarily see a 37th parallel pattern that goes beyond just say population. Within that range, there's a lot of people living within that range. And in order to have an anomalous claim, you have to have people to make it. So, there's a lot of stuff along that, but you can pick other, latitudes, longitudes or whatever. You can find similar sort of things if you look for them deep enough. The whole idea that there's like electromagnetic ley lines surrounding the earth that somehow connect a lot of paranormal phenomena together. That there are window areas or places where whatever, due to the phenomenological nature of the geological location, maybe there are portals or windows or passageways to other realities or other ways of perceiving or non-human intelligences that can manipulate perception, or different dimensions, or hallucinations. Who knows what? There's a lot of different things that can be connected to whatever the causal element is there, and you do have to make the causal element connect to all of these, but we're pretty much speculating with a lot of this. I don't think too many people have claimed portal openings within this area beyond spook-like type stuff. So I don't know. There are other places like Skinwalker Ranch and Marley Woods. I've been to the Marley Woods. I've researched there. There are quite a few places outside of that 37th parallel. I don't see why a human, longitude or latitude thing would have a relevance, to some sort of natural connected phenomena. I think that is mostly like media sort of thing, trying to find those patterns. They're interesting, but I think you need to take some of that stuff out that maybe is not connected to thing. Like the 411 stuff. I don't think necessarily connects with that. I think it's interesting when we do have things like mounds that connect to it. Those patterns I think are intriguing. It's all about finding these patterns, and I'm not too convinced by 37th, but I am convinced that there are hot spots.
But as a fan, I love the idea of the 37th parallel. I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't care what people think.
I love the Bermuda Triangle. I love the Bermuda Triangle, but I don't think it's necessarily real.
Right. You look at the Bridgewater Triangle, the Devil's Triangle, the Bermuda Triangle. We like to put shapes and patterns, like Michael said. Humans love patterns. We are creatures of making sense of things through pattern. And when you can make it a triangle, that seems to be the way to go with it. When in reality, you're just kind of, I guess, almost limiting the phenomenology and the anomalous things happening.
I think Grand Tower. I think when we say Grand Tower, we're not necessarily talking about the town. I think we're using Tower Rock sort of as our center. Because it's an interesting feature that sort of is a good way to broaden out and look. But I think from the Grand Tower feature, if you expand out like about 10 miles, there's just so much within that small area, and it's not a heavily populated area. You can go to like New Orleans and find 80 haunted locations, but a lot of that is going to be tied to the history and the culture, not necessarily anything legitimately phenomenological. Or maybe I'm wrong. But when but that's a high population area, so you're going to have greater stories and claims just because there's a longer history. This is a small town. It's always been a small town, and this area is actually pretty small. There's a university nearby, but that's sort of the boundaries of where all of these folklore tales that cross different anomalous fields all within this one area. That's what makes it interesting, and that's where we can speculate.
The Missouri-Illinois Triangle.
There we go. Joe's coined it. I love it. All right. Second to last question for you guys. From each of you, what do you hope people will take away from the film? Now, I left feeling really invigorated and wanting to go there, which again, I think is like what any good film about a specific location should do. So Joe, let's start with you. What do you hope people will take away from your film?
So again, I mentioned I'm a huge fan. So I hope I made a film that I think I like. I made a film that I think if I didn't make this film and someone else did, I think, man, this is a cool film. That's what I'm hoping. People will see that, like, just fans of this type of subject matter, and won't be bored by it. You know what I mean? I hope they look at it and also kind of think, this is a sincere film. It doesn't sound like these people in here are just making stuff up, or it's not like again, I watch all these shows on TV, so I'm not dogging on anyone, but a lot of these shows are just let's just exploit it and we'll make things happen that are not really happening. I'm hoping people can look at this and go, I think there's something really here. I like how Kevin mentions in the film, and he kind of mentions this in one of his books too, that some people see this stuff and are scared by it. Other people experience this stuff and it kind of charges them. And I've talked to people where they're like, that live down there, that like, I like this feeling, I like this weirdness down here, so I hope people can see that passion for this subject matter comes across in the film, and they can at least enjoy it and maybe give them this sense of wonder that basically that I've had since as a child, about these stories that, people always say, why do people mess with Bigfoot? That's bull crap. It's like, why can't we have fun? Why can't we just have fun with these subjects? And they are important to a community, it does affect the community. If you really want to get into that, it 100% affects the community. These people have not so much Grand Tower, but there's a big Muddy Monster Festival that people enjoy. Why can't we enjoy these subject matters? So I hope people can at least enjoy the subject matter. And please call it UFO, not UAP, people.
We are UFOers through and through. Michael, before I get to your answer, buddy, Joe, I have to ask, who was your graphic artist for your animations? They were gorgeous in this film. Let's shout them out if you don't mind.
So I did most of them, actually.
Wow,
so I did all of them, but 3 of the drawings, and the other guy was Mark Randall.
Of course,
yeah. So he did the Bigfoot stuff, and he also did the depiction of the Enfield horror creature. So okay. But I've been getting into animation lately, and I know it's not like Disney quality or anything like that, but I don't even know what the style is called, but I kind of went for a little bit of a retro look and a retro feel, trying to go with the time period, but I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I'm a graphic designer, so I kind of know how to do some stuff, just enough to be dangerous, not enough to be a master, So.
Hey, well, it was great, man. It added so much to the film. Michael, what do you hope people will take away from Grand Tower?
Well, it's there's a lot of stuff out there that you can consume within these subjects, and I think ultimately everybody's going to see this at some point, and I think people are going to be entertained by it, and I think people are going to be intrigued by it, and I think it's a reboot in a ways to show us that we can get back to the basic lore and the basic questions, and consider these mysteries, consider what's going on at Grand Tower. I hope that people look into it, they're intrigued by it, and they want to look into it more. And I hope that they engage in research, and some people are encouraged to do even further, deeper research. Maybe go after some of those records that I was talking about. Maybe go after some other witnesses. There's probably other evidence out there. I think when you get to these, these UFO cold cases, which, I'm really fascinated with, there's a lot of information out there that is starting to disappear. And as researchers, it's incumbent upon us to try to find that data and keep it so that we can study it and consider it. I hope people look at this and they want to ask questions. I think there's too many, docs out there that claim to have the answers, but really aren't asking the right questions. And I think this encourages us to ask questions, and I think it excites us. I think it interests us without being sensational. I've always said, and I said that to Joe and Seth and others over the years, that you don't need to sensationalize. You don't need to go overboard with your graphics and all this stuff to try to sell, because these are really fascinating things on their own. And I think the more honest you are, with how they're represented, the more honest you are with the real stories in the accounts and the way things looked, I think Joe's graphics were on par, because we need to get back to that, because if these claims are evidence, then they need to be accurate, and they need to be as accurate as possible, not biased in a certain way to look a certain way. I think Joe was able to balance that artistically really well with the interpretations of what people saw. I think that's refreshing, and I think that's the sort of thing that will get the hook. The reality, these things are just so much more on their own. If you get into the details of these cases, they encourage research, and that's what I want to do. I want to encourage research.
Absolutely, man. The new generation's coming up, and I think it's films like this that will really help a lot of the younger people know where this all really started to become a thing, to become a field of research, the study of UFOs and high strangeness. We cannot forget that is a huge portion of this film as well. A film that I cannot recommend enough. So
thank you so much.
Of course, Joe. Obvious last question. Do we know when and where we will be able to see Grand Tower UFOs?
It's going to be a surprise. No.
Okay.
So I have a distributor. So that distributor will be getting it on like Tubi and like Roku and just a host of other streaming services. So, but before it does that, I'm waiting on this other large company and it's a process with them. And I can't even tell you the name of the company because you're not supposed to advertise before it's on it. But let's just say if you were in the Amazon jungle, that's a prime location to watch a video. So I'm waiting on that company to release the film. Unfortunately, a lot of people submit there, so it just takes a long time to review. It's going to pop up here within a month. Okay. And then we'll go from there. Like the movie's complete. We have DVDs and all that, but we're just waiting for it to launch on the streaming services, waiting patiently for that to happen.
Yep. Yeah. I know that feeling. Trust me.
This was a Kickstarter backed project, which I encourage, because it maintains creative control and control of story. Because when you get into the corporate realm, it's a different thing. It's a different product they're trying to produce with a different focus, and it's very limited. And there's things that they're going to want happen, right before the commercial breaks and all that sort of stuff. But we don't have to worry about that. And this is a great project. This is the second project I've worked on with Joe, and I've like I said, I've worked with Seth and others, and I think this is a good way to do these type of documentaries. This was a great creative run for me and Joe here. I think we'll probably collaborate on other things in the future. I'm in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, so there are there's a tale here that we may have to look at and maybe do a bigger documentary on a certain saucer incident.
You guys are so subtle with your Cape Girardeaus and your Amazon jungles. I love it. That's so cool. Well, again, yes, we should also mention this was a Kickstarter campaign, and that's so important. You guys, you told the story you wanted to tell, and you gave justice to all of these witnesses and individuals in this town and abroad who experienced these things. So again, I cannot recommend it enough. I can't wait for it to start streaming, and I am encouraging every single one of you to go watch it for sure. And I know this will not be the last time I have you guys on the show from what it sounds like. So thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Michael.
you. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, for coming on Somewhere in the Skies today.
Appreciate you.
This has been a production of LIONSGATE Sound. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever possible. Thank you for listening.